Hi, you guys. It's MJ from Alta Love. How are you? I want to say thank you to everybody who was live with me yesterday. Um, yeah, it's been a tough year, actually. So, and it's kind of like one of those things. I've taken the video down just for my own feeling of safety and protection. And as is my process, I've basically been reflecting on the entire experience for the last 24 hours. And there's lots of different angles to all of it. And as a very sensitive empath, I'm aware of being in service and acting as mirrors, and how we are always choosing a collective experience. So previously, I might have wanted to finish YouTubing altogether or gone into quite a profound shame spiral. There's a little bit of clearing shame, but mostly I feel safe here. And I accept that if people are going to judge me or ridicule me or hate me, then that's their choice and they can come and go as they please. But I'm continuing to work through my own sensitivities around judgment and criticism, and also the very subtle aspect of just putting stuff onto each other. Um, especially the ones who are putting themselves out there and sharing quite openly and in an exposed way, being mindful of putting our own stuff onto them, especially when we're talking about stuff that is relevant to all of us in the way that we grew up. And so today, mid-April, I just want to be honest, and I'm super thankful for what you guys have brought to me as far as where you're at and what you're experiencing. And I've tuned in just to a couple clients, my own personal spiritual mentor, my mother, my besties, and everybody is just, or certainly the world that I'm being reflected by is reflecting back and affirming this sort of very profound clear out and very profound shift now. And the weird paradox, I think, is that I'll always speak for myself ultimately, is that there's just been these leaps after leaps after leaps, and the egoic or my 3D paradigm mind thought I was chasing a destination. And in the reversal, I was actually chasing just within. But I had to stop and I had to slow down. I had to let myself rest, i.e., the deep rest or depressed state of being, which 3D paradigm wants us to fix it. Just take a pill, just stop being depressed. And I'm somebody who grew up with a mother in and out of hospital and on and off different medications and days on end not being able to get out of bed. And at the same time, someone who shared love and wisdom in a way that maybe wasn't conventional, but I think it did me all right, and at the same time healing the underlying threads of what it's like as a child to grow up in that environment, because there is a very natural, innocent, childlike desire to see people happy, to see our parents happy, to see our siblings happy. And if that's not the case, then it appears that many of us with those sort of circumstantial childhoods spend our time just being of service, and so there's a healing taking place across the board. Certainly, it's a healing around the feminine. Again, it doesn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl. We're healing our femininity, and the reason for the anger is part of the denied state. And this is where I have to reflect, and I sometimes find myself noodling over an extraordinary amount of energy and emotion. And it kind of goes something like, don't tell me what to do. I've been following the rules and have uncovered deceptions, and so you don't get to tell me what to do anymore. And I'm saying that from a very calm and centered place because I own my power and I get to choose what I think, what I feel, and how I go about moving in this world. And I trust my intuition. So at any point, it's like when we go around telling each other, unless it's a conscious and mutually uh, in the open exchange, i.e., if somebody is booking my time, then there is a intuitive call that those two intuitions, i.e., when somebody is encapsulating my time via a financial exchange, that's one thing. But when we're here in these sort of exchanges, it's like I'm sharing my experience. And so if we're criticizing that sharing or putting labels on it and then invoking this sort of energetic charge, then it's highly likely there's a collective clearing. And so this is tricky to navigate, right? Because there's this part of me that is like, there's nothing wrong with having these upheavals, but part of it is that, like, and then pointing fingers, being like, haha, or, oh, okay, I'm glad you're better now. And I'm like, but there was never anything wrong. There's never anything wrong with having these reactions and feeling these things. And yet I'm aware of the sensitivity around it. I'm aware of my own, what I have to, after closing down the video and meditating and relaxing and crying loads, wailing and wailing, and realizing there is a collective experience here. And I've chosen it. And at the same time, I'm treading carefully in my own awareness for my own self because I'm aware of past historical programming around shaming that, and where people are, that's you're putting it on, or you're hysterical, or you need to be medicated or institutionalized, or any number of things for having explosive emotional reactions. And yet increasingly in the world, people's lids are popping off. People are having explosive reactions, and it's not what it looks like. And that's part of my sort of plea to humanity, is that we stop judging each other and putting our perspective onto other. Just be with the feelings, and that's what we've been in denial of. A lot of people aren't even really clear about what they're feeling in any given moment. People aren't even, fully breathing and fully present in their bodies. So often I think we so easily, because of our own fear, we so easily just want to attack other and want to put shit on other because it's uncomfortable, because we don't want to talk about poverty, or we don't want to talk about war, we don't want to talk about privilege because it might stir something in us. And yet I think, well, at some point might be relevant to talk about it, or it might not. And even as I say those words, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm kind of over it. That's why I'm thankful for all of you. It doesn't matter whether it's like a I love you or some trigger. I have love for and appreciation for the people who show up and who, like, are softening and are looking at themselves and are, taking responsibility, because we all know that we can't force one another to do this. And yet it's so deep and it's so profound. And a lot of us have been doing it for a long time, like most of our lives. And it's only that now, with this whole awakening and this rise of our energy, we're becoming more aware. We're deducing. We ourselves are looking in and becoming the experiment to the self. And, we're so conformed to conformity. So all this figure it out yourself and know thyself and da 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 is a pretty big stretch, And often when I'm working with people, I recommend, one, build a meditation station. Two, if you feel like you have a story to share, or you feel like you have a practice to share, then share it. Like, And sometimes we might not even be publishing the work that we're doing, but we could put it unlisted, or we could I for months before I actually broadcast anything live, I just recorded myself. I just got used to doing this in front of a camera and getting used to not being like totally cringed out by myself. So we can work our way up to, and ultimately, this is a little bit of a sideline insight, but recognize that words are finite. Words are a finite form of creative expression, which is why a lot of us in this community are bridging into a desired practice to hone telepathy as a skill. Because words, people get lost in words. People are so disconnected from the feeling center and so fixated on the mental capacity that we sometimes use words and make all these, don't even realize that we're making all these assumptions during any given conversation or exchange. And because we were taught, I think, therefore I am, and that, the thoughts and our intellect and our linearity and logic is the be all and end all. We're kind of all flipped upside down and turned round. And so I have here, yes, the deeper depths are rising. So I'm sending out loads of love and compassion for all of you and myself. This is what I recognize is a fundamental part of this whole self-love, self-care practice, is that it's kind of counterintuitive sometimes, or really weird, is that I don't want to go back into control patterns. I don't want to go back into micromanaging my life. I want to be free. I desire total freedom. So every time these deeper waves of clearing happens, i.e. the cellular activity that has either been asleep or hidden to our awareness, it's all like coming up en masse. And so those connected to me, all to love, it would appear that we're shifting some, and I would say it's been dormant, long denied, but we have been harboring these energies this whole time. We've just not had the opportunity to look at them, nor have we had the awareness or the light to hold this clear out that's happening. Now we're able to hold it, which is why it's clearing out. And it's depression and anger. And if any of you have actually suffered depression and healed sort of without medication, and or healed via the emotional healing and mental healing, it's that oftentimes and this is something that I've continued to work through, and something a lot of people I work with when it comes to like the people pleasers, empaths and people pleasers, we tend to have a lot of suppressed anger because we've basically completely denied our own personal power, and we got into patterns of actually giving our power to like every person around us and doing their bidding. And so when we start to own it and we disentangle, there's often like loads of anger that has to come out. And this is why I find in our spiritual circles, and I've had this happen to me, where people shun you for having anger. And in my awareness, I would not have been able to do the healing that I've done totally on my own, and at times with help of healers. But mostly it was when I just started to own my anger and not blame the other person for how I felt. And then I noticed that there was like these layered wounds and memories, karma memories, past life memory, ancestral visions of how and what happened to some of my ancestors and where they lived and what we used to get up to. And so it's only through demasking the anger and realizing that our cellular emotional reactions have very little to do with what's happening in the here now present. Normally, we're reacting based on a historical context. So unless we can, in that moment, be aware of what past life, or be aware of what social programming, or what have you, then again, in this bridging process, like, be present rather than, telling each other what to do. And I say this for myself, like, we're all one here. I know it's all edgy sometimes, but that's part of it. We can't move through this belt without facing our shadow, without owning what it is that we carry. And I love being a sunshine, happy person for you guys, but I'm also just human. with a full spectrum of emotional frequencies. And I have, in my own journey, written a book that has deduced that our emotional reactions are what I call the karmic backlog. We have a whole bunch of energy that needs to be released, which is, this is why we all resonate. And even when I wrote the book, it was intuitively guided. And there's a line early in the book saying, like, I don't think this material is going to resonate with everyone, but if it does, it's meant for you. So you guys who have naturally found the channel, it's like, somehow miraculously, from all different parts of the world, this work, this inner work, this emotional work, this owning the totality, it's in us. Just because, like, the book came through me, or any other book for that matter, like, we know what it is, we feel it intuitively, and we've been doing the work all our lives. So a lot of people who are just new to the work, um there's this little part of me that's like, just step back, like, own your stuff, but let's not kind of point fingers and tell each other, who's right and who's wrong. Because ultimately, when we're pointing a finger, we really just need to point it back at ourselves. And that's something, and why I am here, is that I've spent my whole life always pointing it back to myself. How can I improve the situation? How can I harmonize the situation? How can I find harmony? Right? And it's only through a distorted sense of my power via this core wound of separation that I ended up in these people pleasing patterns my whole life, and very recently have withdrawn them, have cut them out, have healed them. And yet now that I don't have those patterns to feed, and all these sort of privileged but victim people to try to tend to, I've had, I guess, 3.5 months of total deep depression, which was always there. It was just covered up in me tending to the victims, being a people pleaser, feeling like a savior. That was also, again, this is where I'm not putting, whether we're the victim or the villain, we're acting out an overlay of unconsciousness. We're acting out an overlay that's hiding us from. And I know it's trippy because it's not linear, and we've been heavily programmed to buy into linearity as a construct of this timeline. But that's ultimately, again, that's another big step in the bridge, is that we're moving from a linear perspective to a cyclical and energetic perspective, which means we're going around in patterns and cycles, and we can feel the up and down rise of energy. Sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down. But we have to be in non-resistance to really allow the authenticity of our creative essence to flow through us. Once we get used to living in the flow, living in authenticity, living in truth. But then there's a certain amount of inner emotional backlog in my personal reality. I had to get used to working through this. And I'm doing this work very consciously for 7 years now. But I unconsciously started doing all this emotional self-responsibility work way back in my teens. Again, because I didn't have that. I had to research and study and take responsibility for myself back then as a child. And so dissolving the emotional abuse patterns via my own victimhood and or savior complex has been part of coming into this sense of centeredness and going, there is nothing wrong with my emotions, and if I'm having a reaction, I can own that reaction. But there is a certain and then again, the way I see it with collective energy and those of us that are sensitive and tuning into the collective is that the entire, or not the entire at all, but there's a huge portion of our human collective consciousness, again, one body, one Christ, right? One body of Christ. And so we're shifting and we're changing, and all this shit is coming to the surface. And, we've been in denial of a bunch of stuff. And so it doesn't surprise me that emotions like anger and depression are really coming to the fore, because those are ones that we ugh, mental health, ugh, depression, oh, let's not talk about it. Ugh. We're whoa, stop being so whoa, don't be so angry. And those polarities, one, you need to have the anger to burn off the depression. You need, or you need to have the anger to kind of burn it out, fire it out. if you keep bottling the anger, you never access the healing energy that comes underneath the anger, that allows you to like love the depression and love that part of you that's been denied. Because a lot of us, like witches or like mystics, the reason we're depressed is because we never were like, we've been perpetually shunned by the mass, by the kind of collective consciousness. But what we're figuring out here is that the entire mass human collective consciousness, for the most part, is enslaved and in fear, and totally like hook, line, and sinker invested in that program. And those of us that we can't survive inherently, our beingness, our blueprint, our divinity can't survive there. So we break out of it at different points in our lives. And for this cycle now, finally, there's like this awareness where we're like, okay, we're here. We know what we're doing. We do know what we're doing. It's just we're like a bit off center because we tried to fit into an extraordinarily imbalanced and dysfunctional and distorted system. Again, one that would destroy its own home and kill one another, even though we are one another. So it's a completely like warped and very relevant to the denial of the black hole within us. You know, deny that level of power and darkness, and then you create it. You actually birth it into the world. So yes, so we need to feel anger. There's nothing wrong with it, but know this: if there's someone around you reacting and having anger, and then you're reacting, boom, pain body, right? And I have to come back to this, like my reactivity. There's that, and there's also often as an empath, you'll find yourself acting out people's projections. So it's always a bit of something that you need to reflect upon, is that if there's something in a group dynamic that needs to come up, it may or may not be totally personal to the person it's coming through. And this is something I've experienced a lot. And again, having lived through a lot of emotional abuse, is that people will put it on you and you're like, well, I don't even know. Like, I just like, it was almost like being an actor in a play. And then when you leave the situation, and the point is that for an empath, if you have that kind of explosive reaction, your abuser can then make you feel bad. And then you're like, okay. And I worked it out recently. I could see that was how I was always kept in abusive patterns, is that, but then I would have these reactions, but we're actually that person's like unconsciousness, not willing to own it, putting it on to the empath. And the empath is like, oh no, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I don't know why I did that. I'm like, I'm super angry or da 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 da. But then you realize it's because the other person doesn't own any of it. They don't own their anger. They don't own their shame. They don't own any of it. And they just want you around. So they're going to do anything to keep you around. And this is what I've come to realize, why people pleasing, why empaths especially need to start owning their power, but also withdrawing from codependencies and toxic situations. And again, it's tricky because there's part of our patterning that is most comfortable there. You know, i.e. this last 3 months of depression, because I have all this space in my reality, because I'm not using up a lot of my energy trying to feed these different people, because they were all around me before. You know, so yeah, it's going to take me just a little bit of time after a lifelong people pleasing to rebalance myself, right? So hence why self-compassion is so important. And I commend and honor the need for withdrawal and things like that, because I'm the only one really living in this body. And so I'm the one who has to really figure out how to anchor it, how to stand on my own 2 feet, how to vibrate in harmony, you know, and radiate that. And it's just a work in progress. And I doubt whether anyone who puts out an image of purity or sanctity or whatever that there's going to be reactivity. Most people just don't so openly put it on live shares. I do, but I, for some reason, had to take that one down. It felt too exposing. And the reason I had to end it as well was that I felt like there was too much like, whoa, no, oh, da, da, da. And I'm like, Like, I know, but I need to, because oftentimes we can pin people there because of our own unconscious projection, and we think it's that we think that has everything to do with the other person, and it's actually more to do with a group dynamic and a group upheaval. So energies, i.e., those of you who were watching, you might have had an emotional clearing as well. You might have started crying. You might have da da da. So that tells me that there was a higher kind of trigger point that was actually for a collective release. Okay, and now I briefly want to talk about spirituality, and also why more and more of us, if we're being guided to, need to continue to speak out. And again, this isn't about gender, it's about energy flow. Although, historically speaking, it has been represented by the gender as well. And spirituality and understanding that truly the majority of our like constructed pockets of society are male dominated. So like even in our spiritual traditions and sciences, like men and women were separate and men dominated it. So like yoga, for example, women weren't allowed to practice yoga with men in the ashrams. And yeah, there's a lot of like like a lot of this sort of fiery anger coming from the feminine, again, dominantly the women, in situations, because the burden that we've been carrying consciously or unconsciously is starting to come out. And what is apparent to me is that there's a lot of women in this situation where they do so much, and like the men aren't even aware of it. And then when they have these reactions, they're like, whoa, 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 calm down. And then, but then there's like a deeper uncovering happening, and it's not what we think. And that's part of why we all need to help each other, because it's not obvious and it is multi-layered and it's deeper than what meets the eye. But that's part of the cleverness, and or like I would say more like cunning, like the cunningness of the matrix and the hologram, and the, you can call it a system of control and domination. That as long as we give that system of control and domination our power, i.e., all that means is that we give anything outside of us more power than our own connection, then we create fear patterns. Fear, stress, separation, unbelonging, they're everywhere. Everyone's running a program, all of us, until we're not, until we see it more clearly. And it's only in being the people that we are, and it's only in the sort of these perpetual reflections that I have that I can always be deducing and sort of working out. I'm like, what is me and what isn't me, and what works for me and what doesn't work for me, and is that person's language and not mine. And another really cool insight that I got yesterday was about how words are finite. Oh, I think I talked about this earlier. So words are like a finite expression. And that leads me to wanting to close. If any of you have watched to the end, one is that I'm going to start playing a little game with you guys to help support this channel financially, whereby whenever I go live, I'll do like a little game where people can like put in donations, and then the highest donation of that share, that person can get like a 30-minute call. I need to be generating more income for All to Love and myself. So I'm trying to be creative with how I can like stick my hose into your guys' bank accounts and funnel it out, so I can keep going and build up All to Love, because All to Love is a business. I need to be generating more capital so that I can reinvest in it. So yeah, I want to play a little game with you guys to support myself and the channel. And then there was something else, but now I forgot. Yeah. So depression and anger. Can you tell? I've actually had some private messages from you guys being like, you seem kind of down. I'm like, yeah, because every day I'm in mind battle, standing down with the light of my awareness for perpetual hatred thoughts, self-hatred, self-disgust, really uncomfortable, really And again, this wave, I'm like, I'm sure a whole bunch of us thought we were in the clear home stretch like 6 months ago. We're like on it. You know, hey, and then I'm like, am I ever gonna want to be here again? I'm not sure. Because that's the legit, and that's been, you guys have been ever so kind in feedbacking that to me as well, that it's not just me, like there's some serious collective shifting happening. And I sometimes get that it's a bit of an imagery, right? But like there's a whole bunch of humans in the collective that don't feel. They don't, so they're not feeling, they're just robotic kind of going around. But it doesn't mean that there's not energy hitting them, and it doesn't mean that there's stuff not moving through them. Hence the highly sensitive intuit or empath. It's that like we're just minding our own business, but because of our sensitivity, we're like we can feel the different energies moving around. And clearly on this sort of divine cosmic journey that we're on, some of us are voluntarily come down here literally just to transform that energy. So it would appear like I don't care whether it's mine or collective, it is what it is. And there's an energy of serious, like, yeah, self-hatred, self-loathing, self-disgust, and then this very burning, achy kind of like I just don't even want to be here. So there's a sense of how do I describe it? Like just passionless, like just like I don't want to be here, don't want to do anything. Nothing is exciting. Nothing. I'm just like, except for you guys. Clearly, like here I am. Like I weren't gonna share today, and then I just couldn't. I'm like, there's stuff to share though, and it's kind of like again me being like, yay, well done, MJ. Again, because like again historically, like I would have wanted to just close the channel and been like, you're such a loser, and I'm like, no, it's all good. As in, you guys are my friends, you know, you're not here, and that's the thing, that's the like polarity of like putting oneself out into these public things after having been like abused by people mostly. And like I know that sounds like a really harsh word because none of these people like struck me, but it was covert. It was all, that's why it's like even more like, because like these were people who like pretended to be nice to me. And then as soon as I didn't behave how they wanted me to, they shunned me. And I just found that so like, and then I'm like, again, as the kid who kind of tried to like work things out for the parents, I'm having to like do these weird like checkpoints in my mind of like, yeah, but they're an adult. Like, why do I have to always be? And like another real clear sign when I was breaking free from these situations were like my mom reminding me, I'm like, have any of them even asked you if you're okay? And I'm like, no, they have not. And look, I'm like literally getting a message from one of you right now, and I know because I'm unlisted, and one of you is messaging me basically like saying that I'm not alone. And of course, like I feel emotion. I might cry. So, and like yesterday when I like got to the end and just pressed end because I couldn't deal, I literally like, it was like end stream and then just like, like these big wails. So there is some deep denied depression that's rising to the surface. We have to use our intellectual capacity at some point to really put everything into a historical context, just simple, so that we can better understand a little bit of what we might be carrying as women and as men, depending on where we're from and depending on the social historical programming of said gender. And then come to me to say, oh, interesting, that's what you're carrying. Oh, interesting, that's what you're carrying, right? Recognize that sometimes when we talk about issues that we are a part of, that's when we get triggered as well. And that it's really easy to point fingers at people and be like, you know, and so just sit with ourselves a little bit longer. Something I'm getting better at. I'm not great at it, but I am better at it, i.e. meditation, yoga, all that stuff. Oh, and this is a big one. It's like I go right back to my earliest discipline, which is the body. And this is something I wouldn't want to necessarily broach or discuss, but it is relevant. And I've noticed it in our some of our healer spiritual circles is, you know, sitting around and talking about stuff, but we're not embodied. Like we're not in our body. And so I kind of want to, and I guess it's relevant because I've naturally started doing a bit of the yoga sharing here, and I've started some classes locally because online entrepreneurship is pretty isolating, and I'm already a very isolated person. So I'm like, I think sharing the yoga, and plus it just so happened that this little community that I'm in needs a yoga teacher. So I'm like, oh, look how that worked out, universe. Thanks a lot. I need you guys and you need me. So yeah, there's like these deep layers of depression and anger and shame and denial. And so if we're open to it, we could be the ones that get hit by it and are here to clear it. At the same time, I'm getting a pretty like, I'll speak for myself, although this is reflected back in some of my connections that pardon me, like we're getting to the end of the tether of like being able to deal. And what I'm hearing, this is kind of a weird one for me, but I'm hearing like we're done living in the shadows. And I think this is what's really interesting about shadow work. It's that I've been doing shadow work, again, not knowing it was shadow work since my early 20s, because I always felt it. Which is why people opening up to empathy or opening up to spiritual awareness, it's we're all coming at this stuff from different angles. And just because somebody appears like all calm doesn't necessarily make them more spiritual. We're all spiritual. We're all made of stardust. It doesn't matter or, you know, anything else. And then when it comes down to it, it's just about here now, presence, and can we be kind and generous to one another? Because it's behind the scenes. It's how we behave when we think nobody's watching. That's the truth of our character and our so-called spiritual nature. And that's what we have to work on. And then just being responsible for yourself. That's, you know, I think that's the best we can do. So I love you guys. I'm so appreciative, like so appreciative. And I'm working through. I am aware of there's definitely something being worked out, and I'll continue to share with you guys as I'm more able to articulate. Words are definitely like shape shifting in my mouth. I don't even know what that means, other than like I do. What that means is like I just want to continue to like speak from here and like recognize like there's a lot of energy moving, and with all the energy moving, I'll just do my best to articulate what comes through. But with acceleration and kind of the depth, I'm noticing there's like a bit of a gap when I get downloads, and then it's like sometimes maybe 28 or 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours, and I might get really sleepy or a few other things happen, and then I can express it. But sometimes there's like these energy, like things happening. It's like I started to be more aware of sound vibration, like as an actual physical thing and how that moves. And so, yeah, there's all these energetic awarenesses coming through, but my ability to articulate them effectively is just taking its time because of what I just said about how words are, the way we use words are starting to shapeshift. And I think we want to be really present with that. Oh, final thing, you guys. One of you has already asked about this, but I'm curious if any more of you are interested. And that has to do with telepathy and practicing telepathy. So I'm going to be doing like a little thing behind the scenes with somebody in a kind of specific way. And then we will share data with you. We will share our insight, progress, and that maybe we'll share some of the exercises with you guys so that we as a community can practice speaking or communicating telepathically. Here's the thing. This is so weird, right? Because it's all the oneness. I'm like, we already are and have been. That's why a lot of us are familiar to one another. Like, we've met before. I'm sure of it. With some of you guys, I'm like, we've totally been through a whole bunch already, because a lot of you are so resonant and familiar. So I'm like, we're already communicating because you guys found me. Like, just the fact that you found this channel. This isn't, how do any of us find anything? We're guided to it. We vibrate to it. We resonate with it. So it's like, yay, finally other humans are here to play with MJ. And not trying to control her or like keep her under your wing. I'm like, don't trap me. So yeah, that's it. Like, love is freedom, right? You guys, thank you. I'll probably be back live tomorrow, but I'm gonna take another day today and just be, because that's what I'm feeling. I might go for a walk. I might go outside. If you guys want to donate to the channel, it's always appreciated. But mostly it's just here about the heart, love, vibrashe, and like sharing the journey with you guys, because let's be honest, nobody fucking knows. Nobody actually really knows. So let's just keep figuring it out and sharing our notes with each other. I love you guys. There's so much in there, by the way. I hope that was useful to you. Maybe even a little entertaining. Although, yeah, okay. I'm a bit subdued. I'm not as sparkly and loud and shiny as normal. What you gonna do, you guys? I'm human, and I'll just keep showing up. And then, I think it was Amit said something about, it's ride or die. It's ride or die. And I'm like, yep, that's right. I know, how weird. To love, ride or die. Like, it is like that though. And I think that's why we gel. You guys feel that fierceness, right? And like sunshine, happiness, and rainbows, and also hardcore. Like, see, I scare myself sometimes. So, and also I'm like, shh, just end it there, MJ, end it there. Love you guys, seriously, for Rizzles. Have a beautiful day. I have so much appreciation for you. Thanks for the donations. Bye.